Right. Good morning and welcome to the Executive Member Decision Session for Economy and Strategic Planning. Just going through the agenda on item 1, declarations of interest. I don't have anything that isn't already on the register. Item 2, to approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of April. Happy to sign those. Yeah. Right, public participation. We have 2 registrations to speak. Firstly, we have Mr. Jeff Beacon in person. If you would like to come to the table. You'll need to press. Has the button been pressed, or it's the one
C button? Yes, there is.
Yes, right. 3 minutes.
Thanks. I propose we recognise 2 new crimes. The first is prompted by the sad case of a cyclist who was killed in an accident after road rage between 2 motorists. The motorists were convicted for causing death by dangerous driving. They did not intend to kill the cyclist, but will justly be punished. They must deeply regret their actions. Well, greenhouse gas emissions. They are mostly poorer people dying of heat in India or starvation by drought in the Sahel. This climate death toll will almost certainly worsen. As we are killing others with our emissions, we should be convicted of a new crime, causing death by greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, one day we may become victims too. Many heat deaths may well come to York this century. The first crime is a crime we individually commit. We are responsible for how many flights we take and how much beef we eat. The second crime is more complicated. York is following a planning policy that will give over £1 billion in planning gain to landowners. It will also keep house prices and rents high. This takes from generation rent to give to property owning baby boomers. There is an unwritten understanding between York Council and their ageing voters supporting these policies, which take from the young and the poor using the property market. There should be a charge sheet which reads, "Conspiracy to steal by local planning." York Council should be explaining these crimes, starting with the areas where these crimes are most severe. For example, in the suburbs near the Outer Ring Road, places like Copmerthorpe and Woodthorpe, where offenders can have high carbon footprints and have been rewarded with large increases in property values. Many of these will be nice people, unaware of their crimes. They should be told. PS, can the chair remind the corporate director of Economy and Place that I have had no reply to my FOI request of the 5th of April about the small number of house builders that control much of York's housing land, that the council noted in a report on the housing market.
Thank you for your comments. Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Beacon. It's not off. Right. Our next speaker is Councillor Claire Douglas, who is coming in remotely. There was a check before. Are you there, Councillor Douglas?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yes, very
Great.
good.
Thank
Okay.
you. So I'm going to speak on the quarterly economic update and also matters within the remit of the committee around planning. It's good to see that York's economy continues to fare reasonably well. York is in the top 10 of cities in the country for footfall recovery, according to data recently released by the Centre for Cities. Anecdotally, though, traders in the city centre are concerned that spend per customer is falling. This isn't surprising given the cost of living crisis the population is living through and a decimation of disposable income. It's a reminder that York is doing well, but there are national conditions that are going to challenge this over the coming months. The executive member can't afford to take his eye off York's economy in any way. Our city faces an economic environment unseen for at least 40 years concerning continued reduction in the claimant count for out-of-work benefits. An unemployment rate at 2% low, our employers struggling to fill vacant positions, and yet more and more of our residents still can't afford the cost of renting or buying a home in their city. This simply can't go on and needs significant action from the council. Many of these arguments are being aired at the ongoing local plan hearings. I would also like to speak to an important planning issue I've been made aware of and have strong concerns the executive member has done nothing about. I ask him why are new build commercial buildings still being constructed in our city that are not accessible to disabled people with mobility issues. The Disability Discrimination Act was first implemented in 1995. In October 2004, 17 years ago, service providers were told to make reasonable adjustments in relation to the physical features of their premises to overcome physical barriers to access. I recently visited Rydale House on Piccadilly, constructed and renovated recently to provide luxury apartments and commercial units on the ground floor. None of it is accessible from the street for people using wheelchairs or other mobility aids. How can this be right? There is a section of our population who simply can't access the building. There is no level access. Why isn't there more awareness and focus from your planning department on making sure this doesn't happen? There are plenty of other examples across the city of a lack of best practice in new builds and renovations to buildings and the streetscape that simply make moving around and living in our city close to impossible, contravening the legislation that is in place to stop just this happening. I look forward to hearing from the executive member to tell me just what he proposes he is going to do to put this right. It's long overdue and adds yet a further fuel to the fire that currently classifies York as a city not open to disabled people. Thank you. And executive member, I'd just like to note that you won't be in this position moving forward, and thank you for your work over the past 3 years, and I look forward to working with Councillor Mason in his new role.
Thank you very much, Councillor Douglas. Right, okay, that deals with the public participation. Okay. So we come on to the quarterly economic update. Simon, would you like to?
Thank you very much, Councillor Waller. So I can just briefly introduce what is quite a long report summarising current situation in the economy and activity over the last 4 months. The last report we brought to you was in January. So we are seeing continued challenges in the labour market. Claimant count is now down to 2,700. There have been figures released since this report was published. And York is still the city in the UK with the lowest increase in unemployment since the beginning of COVID. But it's worth noting there's still around about 1,000 people more claiming benefits than were before the pandemic. And at the same time, vacancies are up at around 3,500 jobs reported on Indeed within 5 miles of York city centre. So this is resulting in continued pressure in pay. I think it's also worth noting that as we show the startup rate has gone down as well. So a lot of changes in terms of how people are earning a living at the moment. Businesses we're talking to, and indeed people more generally, are experiencing some the challenges of inflation, price and supply challenges in the global economy are working their way through to businesses, whether that's energy costs. I think particularly impactful on smaller businesses that don't have the benefit of larger, longer term contracts with energy providers, and also in terms of supply chain, most notably for those importing things from China, where the current COVID lockdowns are impacting on availability of lots of goods and materials. Beyond that, we're also seeing continued inflation and price pressures, including in the housing and office and industrial unit market, all presenting challenges to businesses and residents and employees alike. I mean, despite those challenges, the York economy is still performing well. Businesses are continuing to trade strongly, and we're seeing a lot of interest in businesses wanting to come and locate in the city. It's no surprise that having recently opened the Guildhall is now already full, and the university report they could have filled it 3 times over with people wanting to get desk space in the centre of York. We report on the recent bid for Great British Rail headquarters, which we hope to hear this week whether or not we've been shortlisted as as a potential location for that HQ. It would be really important for our rail sector, and we set out in the report our analysis of the potential benefits that GBR coming to York would have on the economy, and also the potential risk, the disbenefit if GBR were to go somewhere else. Pleased to provide a summary in the report of all of the grant funding that's been provided through the COVID pandemic. It's been a regular feature of our reports over the last couple of years, and this is the last reckoning of that. As you can see from the figures, we have made sure that we've given out every penny that we've received from government, and really pleased that York has both been at the top of the government's league table of councils that in terms of getting the money out through the door, and also in terms of the number of businesses supported. Our approach has been very much to spread that money far and wide across our economy, with a real focus on the smaller micro businesses that were not eligible for some of the rates related grants that government had provided. So our discretionary spending has gone to as many businesses as possible, I think, and demonstrating clearly our approach to inclusive growth. We also report on our business growth voucher scheme, which was funded through some of that ARG money. Really proud of the work done by the team to make sure that York businesses could support York businesses through the last 6 months, and over 350 businesses received help from around 100 other York businesses, a total of 435 projects, as we say. Really interesting approach, and lots of great anecdotal evidence from the businesses that have been helped about what a difference that has made, and something that we hope we can continue as a feature of our approach to economic development in the city. We'll also begin to talk about some of the opportunities coming ahead and some of the work ahead of us in coming months around the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, the government's follow-on to European funding, which will provide support for business support, but also for projects around people and communities, and also funding to support all those initiatives that set out in the city's skills strategy, which has been recently approved both by the Skills Board and by Council. Our economic strategy is also approaching a stage where it will be out for public consultation over the summer, so we'll see more of that in future meetings of this committee, although I'll also note that that will be your successor. I'd just like to finish by offering on a personal note. So thank you for your support over the last 3 years through what's been a really, really challenging time for economic development, and it's been great to have you giving consistent leadership and helping us through the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. That's very kind. So just dealing with the report, because I think it's been helpful to have a wide range of data information collated into one document, one report that people can see what is going on, because I recognise that a lot of different teams are pulling together to ensure that the council does what it can to support businesses. The grants for businesses, that's been one example, and maximising the impact of those and utilising the local decision making that could be made. So the York way of ensuring that it was spread widely, that there was a specific recognition of that many of the small and micro businesses that we would want to be around for the recovery would still be around and would feel valued. And so I appreciate the efforts that have gone in to there, which other councils necessarily haven't done. I think whilst we couldn't have imagined the impact of the pandemic, even in the darkest days of the pandemic, there wasn't the thought that there would be the challenges at the other end of the lockdowns, and the pressures of a war in Europe, the impact of Brexit not having worked through the system entirely, and economic pressures, inflation, and materials and labour shortages all compounding the situation. It shows how important it is to have the economic development team recombined, so that there is a coherent response from the council. And it's important that the partnership working that was established during the pandemic continues. It demonstrated the strength of York coming through that period of time, and that the statistics as provided by the Centre for Cities shows that we have maintained the strength of the York economy, whereas others haven't always been able to do that. And therefore it is a tribute to the working together, which I hope, whilst there will always be those differences with partners, we have discussions, and particularly during the inquiry for the local plan, which is now ongoing, that is done in a constructive way. And I'm sure that the inspector will see the strength of the local plan, and that we can get on with the planning supplementary policy guides, which I'm sure there'll be a lot of comment on as they're developed. The rail headquarters, British Rail headquarters bid is going to be important for the city. As a former rail employee myself, I see the interconnection between different businesses and the city being an important asset to ensuring a wide range of employment opportunities in the years to come. Local decision making is becoming more critical, and I think if there is any beneficial outcome of the interruptions to supply chains, it's becoming more self-sufficient, and that does enable those connections between businesses in the city to strengthen. And I do hope that the successor to the business growth voucher scheme, that equally produces some very good case studies. Just in terms of work with partners on response to the increase in fuel costs that businesses are facing, but also the other pressures that businesses are reporting. Simon, are you able to comment on the work with FSB and Chamber on that activity?
Yes, thank you. As you say, we continue very close partner working with a whole range of business organisations, but in particular, we're working with the Federation of Small Businesses and the Chamber of Commerce to support small and medium businesses through the pandemic. There's a series of podcasts and support available or becoming available through the FSB that we're working on, and we continue to meet regularly to make sure that we understand the issues as FSB see them, and particularly in terms of, I mentioned earlier on that one of the challenges of rising energy costs is particularly seen by smaller businesses that are in less secure energy contracts. And that's something that FSB are working closely on, and we speak with them regularly. So as and when there are things that we can deliver locally, that would be really important. And I think as we look forward to what we might be able to provide through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, a real emphasis in terms of helping small businesses deal with some of the challenges of energy, while at the same time thinking about how they reduce their carbon footprints and even decarbonise. Those two pieces were really close, hand in hand, and I'm sure will be a strong theme that will come through the work we do over the next few years.
Thank you for that, and I think that's very important, that just as many businesses took those longer term business pivoting during lockdown, that this pressure on energy costs will speed up the adoption of low carbon technologies, and clearly with the massive investment by the European Union in decarbonising the energy supply as a consequence of Russia cutting off that supply, that there will be a benefit to the UK. We are still part of Europe, whether we like it or not, and some of us wish to retain that connectivity. So happy to receive this report. I'm grateful for the work that goes into this, and as I said, all of the teams that work on that. And as this is my last meeting as executive member for economy and strategic planning, I'd like to thank you, Simon, and Robert for all the work, and Richard at the back, to keep these meetings going. That it's an opportunity to showcase what is going on within the department. In previous structures, there was other councillors around the table to have a discussion, and one is left with having a discussion with oneself, which has a unique status. But I'd like to, if Simon, you could pass on my thanks to the rest of your team. That's an important feature, and I'm sure that you'll work very hard to bring Councillor Mason up to speed. Thank you very much. There's no urgent business. I bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.